Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 978. I had the white pieces and started off with e4. My opponent played c5. We get a Sicilian. I play knight f3, intending to play a normal open Sicilian with d4. But he surprises me with the move a6. This is known as the O'Kelly variation of the Sicilian. Against any of these other moves, I would continue with d4 here, but against a6, the best move is actually to do something a little different. Playing d4 is not the end of the world. We can take a brief look at that. For example, if you play here, you can take, you take back. And he does have the option, well, he could play e6, which would actually transpose into a con Sicilian by interesting move order. But another thing he could try here is e5, going for a Sveshnikov, where he's taken away the b5 square from the knight. So that's kind of an interesting way to play. There are other ways that black can play at that point. But I guess the point is that this a6 move is a generally useful move in the open Sicilians. And so if you want to try and refute it, you want to play a line where this a6 move is not so useful. And that is why the choice here is c3 or knight c3. I think that will also get you to a Sicilian where this a6 move is not so useful. But the chess engine approves of this theory too. It thinks those are the two best moves here. But you do have to learn how to play a different Sicilian than maybe what you're used to. Although, as I showed in the other line, you're also going to be on your own in other lines as well, depending on how black plays. Anyway, he could continue here with d5 immediately, but he played e6 first to set it up. I think that's fine. I played d4. That's the normal response. You play c3 followed by d4 to try and build up a big center. That's the idea with this c3 move. And if he takes, you take back. He doesn't take right away, but anyway, if he takes, you take back with the pawn to try and create that big pawn center. He played d5, which is the normal move. And here white has a number of choices. Let's see which one. I looked at a couple of them. Yeah, just continuing with e5. You could play bishop to d7 here. This is a French defense. We've transposed into a French defense, and this is an advanced variation of the French defense. He can take here, or he can keep the tension for a while. And it's hard to say whether that a6 move is useful or not. If he trades and then the knight comes here, then there are times where the knight wants to go to b5 and then come around to this square. But that's quite a few moves away, so thinking pretty far ahead with that a6 move. Maybe another idea is to support b5 himself. So this should be okay for black. It's okay for white too. It's a fine way to play. See, that's one of the top choices. Or you could take here. And then normally taking back with a pawn, it is possible to take with the queen because it's a situation where you can't play knight c3 and harass the queen immediately, but taking with the pawn is more common. And then you can see a whole variety of choices here for white. I put this on the chess engine, and it came up with a different plan. It liked the move g3 here for white. So that might be an interesting way to play if you want to try something different. So that would be, in this position, taking rather than playing e5 and then playing g3 and fianchettoing the bishop. So that's the plan. I played bishop d3, and even though it's not in the book, and we're just out of the opening book at this point, let's go here to this page. It seems like it's okay. Maybe the e5 and e takes d5 lines give a slightly bigger advantage to white, but white still has the usual opening edge here, and then the game stays around even. I mean, it's really only a slight edge here. No, but he didn't play that. Let's see. He played d takes e4, right? So the game stays around even for this section. Let's see. He plays knight to f6. I drop my bishop back. For some reason, the chess engine didn't like this, dropping the bishop back to d2. It was even suggesting bringing the knight out to d2 to defend the bishop. I guess it doesn't want to give up on development, but I think this should be okay for white as well. Let's see. He went knight c6. I castled. Now he takes here, and I took with the pawn. This is one of the reasons I decided to keep this game, even though it was a short game, had a sudden end. Well, there's a couple interesting things about it. First is there's a little bit of information about the O'Kelly variation in case you see that, give you some idea of how to deal with it. And then the second point was I wanted to make here is that I think modern players seem to be afraid of the isolated queen's pawn. In fact, I read somewhere that they were saying that modern grandmasters, they don't like playing with the isolated queen's pawn and they don't like playing against it either. They just avoid these positions entirely. But I think they're fine for club players, and probably it's just a matter of style that the top level players don't go for them so much. But I think they're very interesting if you're an attacking player to try and get to these isolated queen's pawn positions and see what kind of attack you're stirring up. You have control over a couple of squares with that pawn. You have a couple of open files for your rooks, and you have a lot of open lines for your bishops. So when you won't play these positions, you want to keep your pieces on the board and try and make them as active as possible. So that's the strategy you should follow here. Let's see. He goes bishop d6. He could have played knight b4 here. That's kind of an interesting move, trying to harass my bishop. But the bishop, rather than giving it up, I'd probably put it on b3. And this is a good place for a bishop in an isolated queen's pawn position as well. I mean, it's fine on this diagonal. Both diagonals are good. An idea with this is that you might put the rook behind the pawn or the knight here and just push that pawn forward and blast things open, especially if you're at a point where you've got a lead in development. Like in this situation, I've already castled. His king is still in the center. It's starting to look attractive to do something like that. Anyway, he didn't do knight b4. He went bishop d6 here. Went knight c3, just bring all my pieces out. He went b5. And now I started playing a little bit of a waiting game. I want to play queen to d3 and set up this mate threat. But I can't do it. It's not very effective right now. I can't do it for a couple of reasons. One is he hasn't castled yet, so you don't want to give away your intentions too soon. The second reason I can't do it is because his knight could hop into b4. So I'm playing a little bit of a waiting game. Bishop g5, though, this is a good... I am just completing my development, but it's a good square for the bishop and preparing to trade off this knight if necessary to help out the attack. So, I mean, what I said about keeping pieces on is true, but you should be willing to trade in order to eliminate defenders of the king side. Let's see, he played h6, and in fact, the chess engine likes taking right here. This is how the chess engine would play this. It would take, and then it would go rook e1, preparing to maybe sink a knight on the e5 square, and after black castles, then go with queen d3. So waiting till black castles to play queen d3, having already gotten rid of the knight, so now black has to respond, and then knight to e5. And this looks like a nice attacking position as well. There may be ideas of a sacrifice here on g6, although probably you need to chase that queen away first. But, well, you could bring a knight in here, for example. So it looks like you can start to flood the king side with your pieces. The rooks can come up and over as well, and you can bring this rook into the game. So looks like a pretty nice position for white. The chess engine is not saying it's a win for white at that point, but it gives it more than 1 point advantage, which is pretty significant considering the material is still even. Let's see, I kept the pin. I just dropped my bishop back. I figured he didn't want to weaken his king side by playing g5, most likely. And if he did, I wouldn't mind that. So I get to keep this pin on, and I'm still looking forward to trading off that knight at the right moment. Let's see, he played bishop back to e7. He decided to break the pin, so he's free to move the knight. This helps him stop the pawn advance, and maybe he can even park a knight on the blockading square on d5. That would be a good idea for black in this position. See, so I'm still waiting. I still don't want to play queen d3 too early. He hasn't castled. He still has knight b4. So I played rook c1. Maybe it would have been more effective at this point to play a3, because I realized, let's see, he played bishop b7. I played rook e1. He castled finally, and I was going to play queen d3 immediately, and I realized I hadn't prevented his knight from coming to b4. So I paused once more, played one more slow move, played a3 there, So I think in retrospect, I should have played a3 instead of playing one of those two rook moves. But this is still quite good for white, so no mistakes. Let's see. He went rook to c8. Well, I should say the chess engine did think that this bishop h4 move was a mistake. That was the only move. When I retreated the bishop instead of taking, it classified that as a mistake. But other than that, that was really my only mistake this game. Of course, it helped that the game was short. It's easier to avoid mistakes when you have a short game. Let's see. So he played rook c8. That's reasonable, but maybe he should have played g6 here. I think that was the chess engine choice at this point. Because after queen d3, it's already quite difficult for him. If he plays g6 now, which is actually g6 is the only move to stay in the game. I just wanted to point out I already have this nice tactic. I can play rook takes e6. So he's already in big trouble in this position. If he takes the rook, the queen will come in here with check, and I can trade off that knight and checkmate him. So that's going to be over pretty quick. If he takes, so he can't take the rook, so basically that just wins a pawn. He can play on in this position, so it's not yet game over. But I did want to point out that even in this position where my opponent blundered, even before the blunder, he was already in a difficult spot. And g6 was the best move he had, but he loses a pawn to rook e6, and you can see that he's in very dangerous straits. But instead of playing g6, he played queen b6, I guess, completely oblivious to the danger here. You know, he got interrupted a couple times during the game. He had to reconnect, it looked like. So maybe he was distracted. You can see actually by his rating, he's a decent player, so he can't be making these kind of mistakes too often. But anyway, it's all over here. I just have to eliminate the knight and then checkmate him, and that's how the game ended. Of course, if he didn't take back, he was just down material, so I mean, he could once again have played g6, but that's even worse. He's not just down pawn, but he's down a piece as well. So anyway, that was the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.